So we had three breakout questions on the table. What is the thesis of the text? What was your favorite wisdom teaching? And then what does the text say about the values of the Kemetic society that produced the text? Who would like to share?
I kind of feel like the thesis was more like centered around being truthful, like following your heart and avoiding greed and conflict. But generally like just doing what's right, following so like you would be remembered well.
I think that's a very spot on assessment. Anyone else want to add to that or complicate his assessment of the thesis? Go ahead, Olivia.
Yeah, I agree with what he said about like being a good person, living a good life, not engaging in fights, being generous. But there also is a clear distinction between like the roles for men versus for women. And I feel like the ones for men were very much like live a good life in these aspects, do these things. But then for women, it was more around not living. I don't know, it was based off of what the men's were, kind of, or they were just completely in a different category.
Okay. Does anyone else feel the same way about Olivia's assessment of the role of women within the text?
I did.
You did? Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hold that thought. I'm going to definitely get into that within the lecture because I think that's very important to address, and we'll get to that for sure. Anyone else want to add to what they felt was the thesis of the text? And if you did your journal, you should be able to just kind of pull from your journal. Go ahead, Kaden.
I felt like it was like emphasizing faithfulness as well as humility, if that makes sense. Like seems like it was highlighted to keeping silence when necessary and performing like one's duty. Pretty much that, like he upheld obedience.
Yeah, it's a good call out. Anyone would like to share their favorite wisdom teaching? Go ahead, Arlen.
For me, that would be number 26. It states, "Do not disturb a great man or distract his attention when he is occupied, trying to understand his task. When he is thus occupied, he strips his body through the love of what he does. Love for the work which they do brings men closer to God. These are the people who succeed in what they do."
Why does that stand out to you?
It's something I resonate with. It's how I kind of move, something I practice, and something I've been doing for a very long time.
Zian?
Something that I liked was kind of the difference between 2 and 4, because 2 is about not confronting evil, and if someone's kind of giving that energy, it's kind of just like be silent and have self-control, while the fourth one is to not attack the ignorant as if they're weak, because I kind of connected it is that you're just becoming like the kind of the bad person in like the second one, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. You're producing the behaviors of the perpetrator, so to speak, right? Absolutely. Anyone else? What's some of your favorite wisdom passages? You don't have to raise your hand. You gotta just shoot it out. Go ahead, Destiny, and then we'll go to Brian.
I would have to say my favorite wisdom teaching would have to be number 1, because while I was reading it, it says, "Do not proud and arrogant with your knowledge." And the way that I took it was that sometimes we may think that we know it all. We may think that we're so smart, we're so intelligent, there's nothing left for us to learn. But at the end of the day, we're still human. We're learning stuff every day. Like new things come out, and like I feel if you hold yourself up to that standard, like I know this, it blinds you because you think that you're superior to everyone else in a sense.
That's a really good assessment and analysis of that passage, Destiny. Thank you. Brian, then Alexis.
I agree with what Destiny said. I like how it talked about arrogance, because arrogance has been like in like our life, our whole lifetime. Like we are so close-minded, and when we see people like embrace themselves or be themselves, like we are quick to judge and like be like, "Oh, stay away from me," and stuff like that. So I liked how it spoke about that.
Good call. Thank you, Brian. Alexis?
I
I was looking at number 8 and number 9 on page 20. Number 8 talks about the way that trust is very important, and I feel like that is true. It talks about the way that if someone speaks to you to share something with somebody else, you should definitely stick to what they said. And I feel like that's how rumors start, how hate begins when it's taken into the wrong context. And for number 9, I feel like it's something that I grew up with. My parents have always told me to stay humble, and the seeds that you plant in good soil, when you harvest them, you need to share. And I feel like that's very wise and it's very important because that's what it's one of the things that makes you successful and prosper in life.
So I want you all to keep what Alexis just said in mind as it pertains to the comment that was made by Imani and I believe Olivia as it pertains to the role of women within the text. Keep this notion of good soil in the back of your mind. Imani?
I was looking at number 3. If you meet a disputant in action, one who's your equal or one who's on your level, you will overcome it by being silent while speaking evilly. I feel like that relates so much to the real world because a lot of people, if they're on the same level as you, they see you as competition and they will try to knock somebody out. While when I grew up, the way that I grew up, especially in church, if someone's on the same level on you, you stay in your own lane. You find ways to climb above in your own level while they're not trying to talk somebody down and worry about what everybody else is doing. So I found that was really that really touched me by the way I grew up.
Thank you. Olivia, then Caroline.
One I liked was, I think it was 25, which was basically saying gain respect through knowledge and gentleness. And I feel like that's a really important one because no one will really listen to you or respect you if you come off harsh, or if you're trying to say like, oh, well, I know more than you, so I'm better than you. So like approaching people with gentleness and trying to share what you have is a better approach than, coming off as some aggressive, like dictator type thing.
Perfect. Thank you, Olivia. Caroline?
I wanted to pick back what Imani was saying, how it's like if you're in the same spot, why should it be a competition? Why don't you work together to become better? So it's like you sometimes have to be more open-minded to certain stuff.
Yeah. All right, we'll go to Destiny and then we'll move on to the third question. Destiny?
I think while I was reading and while I heard some people, I forgot who mentioned it, but they were talking about like the structure of it, and it's similar to like just the entire reading, like practicing, like someone in my group said self-control, self-awareness, and I think it's basically kind of like the steps into being like a respectful person to everyone, as well as like just being a decent human being in general. And I found it really, like, I connected it back to like how in the Bible there's like the 10 Amendments, which is like very, what's the term, broad, like it doesn't specify, but this definitely goes into such more detail on how to like do this respectfully, be that, and like just
I like what you said, Destiny, and here's why. Often, like about 3 or 4 years now, I've been teaching out of this text. Every year, the 10 Commandments come up, right? But where you differ from everyone else who brings out the 10 Commandments, you're attentive to the fact that, like, this is very detailed instructions on how to produce these behaviors. It's not just a commandment. Don't do this, right? They're telling you how to go about to perform and to be a good person. It's more detailed and more specified. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, because in the 10 Amendments, it's just like anyone can interpret it in like such different ways and meanings, and this one definitely like goes deep in detail to explain like this is what you should do.
All right. And we'll get 2 answers real quick. What does the text say about the society that produced the text? So what are the values for those who for the people who are being taught to, for the people who are being instructed on the ways of Ptahhotep? What are the values of the society of Ptahhotep? What is the values of the Kemetic society where they would place these 37 wisdom teachers on paper and try to structure the society? What does it say that they value?
I feel like they obviously value honesty, and truthfulness, humble, like to be humble and to be like kind and not to fight. Like they seem very peaceful and they're pushing peace.
I'm going to stop right there because you're absolutely correct. This idea of valuing peace, right? So we'll use that to segue into my lecture. The passage or the reading is from this book here. It's called The Teachings of Ptahhotep, the oldest book in the world, right? And I'll provide some evidence as to why it's the oldest book in the world from the introduction of the text. So again, you didn't have access to this because this is the intro. I just wanted to kind of give you the meat of the text. But it says that Ptahhotep himself was said to be the eldest legitimate son of an unnamed pharaoh, and he was 110 years old when he wrote this book. M. Revolt has said that Ptahhotep was in line to become the pharaoh, but he renounced the throne and politics in favor of the priestly calling. So he didn't want to be the pharaoh. He instead chose to be a priest. This is consistent with the description of Kemetic education as providing a choice for two paths in higher education, one more sacred and one more secular, such as politics. So a few things we get gleaned from this passage. One, Ptahhotep was 110 years old when he wrote this, right? He was in line to become pharaoh, and he negated his opportunity to become pharaoh to be a priest, right? And then they say that in Kemetic education, there was two avenues that you would end up being in, either a priest or a politician, right? So one of the things that becomes of importance, Africa gets a lot of credit for being an oral tradition society, right? But they rarely get credit for being a written society. And keep in mind, this is the oldest book in the world, right? So you can't have the oldest book in the world without writing some shit down, right? So one of the importance of this book is to dispel the myth that Africa was not a written society, right? The text says that the Metu Neter, so what you all understand to be as the hieroglyphics, are actually called the Medu Neter, right? MDW, Medu Neter. Netcher, the Metu Neter, is Africa's and the world's oldest recorded writing system. What's important about the Metu Neter is that there is no evidence of a developmental period. This writing system simply appears fully developed, as it must have existed ages before either Kemet or Tasseti came into being. The existence of this writing alone is testimonial to the development of early civilization in the ancient Hapti or Nile Valley, right? So this writing system, the hieroglyphics that Metu Neter, there is no evidence of a developmental period, right? So when it comes on the scene, when it comes on the planet, it appears fully developed, right? So what this indicates that even the Metu Neter is older than the ancient Kemetic societies, right? It predates the ancient Kemetic society. To speak to how old this wisdom teachings are, or how old this text is, right? It says that the instructions of Ptahhotep were copied during the Middle Kingdom on papyri that are still preserved. Some Egyptologists believe that because the instructions were attributed to Ptahhotep, and because there was indeed an Old Kingdom sage by that name, and because Middle Kingdom writers attributed the sayings to that sage, who was said to have served under King Asa of the 5th dynasty, therefore they should accept that attribution in the absence of compelling evidence to the contrary. So in other words, right, we know that there was a sage in the Middle Kingdom named Ptahhotep. They know that he served under King Asa, which takes place in the 5th dynasty. But what it says is there's no evidence that contradicts that, right? And since there's no evidence that contradicts these realities, then we have to take this as true, okay? And it says that even if it were Middle Kingdom material, at an age of the 12th dynasty, approximately 2000 BC, it would still be the oldest wisdom literature in the world. Given a 5th dynastic age, we can say that the instructions of Ptahhotep belong to a period approximately 2,500 years before Christ, right? So this definitely predates the Bible. So for me, and I would argue that the thesis is found on page 16, the opening page. Looking at the second paragraph towards the bottom of that paragraph, starting with a sentence that says, may your servant, right? And it says that, may your servant be authorized to use the status of old age affords, right? We know that he's at 110. So in other words, let me use my 110 years of wisdom to teach the hearers so as to tell them the words of those who have listened to the ways of our ancestors and of those who have listened to the gods. May I do this for you so that strife may be banned from among our people and so that the true shores may serve you. Now, what is strife? What does the term strife mean?
It could be wrong, but isn't it kind of like anguish, kind of like pain, basically?
Yeah, anguish, pain, beef, right? Arguments, war, bickering, conflict, right? So the desire of this is to eliminate strife, right? And when you don't have strife, you have what Olivia mentioned is peace, right? So the desire of the instructions of Ptahhotep is to produce peace, is to create a society that is peaceful, to create a society that is harmonious, right? So that the two shores may serve the king. And if we are to apply that concept to the United States, right, we're on California on the West Coast. So we have the Pacific Ocean, right? So we have the Western Shore. Those on the East Coast in New York, they have the Atlantic, right? They want to make sure that these two shores serve one king. It's another embodiment of harmony, another embodiment of peace. So how will we create the society that doesn't have strife? Ptahhotep states, and so it begins. The formulation of Medu Nefer, Medu, MDW, Nefer, NFR, good speech. So we know that Medu Nefer is good speech. To be spoken by the prince, the count, God's beloved, the eldest son of the pharaoh, the son of his body, mayor of the city, and the visor. Ptahhotep instructs the ignorant in the knowledge and in the standards of good speech. It will profit those who hear. It will be a loss to those who transgress. Ptahhotep began to speak to the pharaoh's son to prosperity. So we know that how Ptahhotep seeks to produce this society that does not strife, that does not beef, is through this notion or this idea of good speech, right? But who does Ptahhotep seek to instruct in this formation, right? He wants to teach the prince, the count, God's beloved, the eldest son of the pharaoh, the son of his body, the mayor of the city, the visor, right? These are all people in power who need to be instructed on how to give good speech. The first passage says towards the bottom, good speech is more hidden than gems than greenstones, or what you would call emeralds. Yet it may be found among the maids at the grindstones. Again, good speech is hard to find. It's as hard as to find as an emerald is hard to find. But you can find good speech among the maids, right? So why would you be able to locate good speech among the maids? What is the quality of a maid that makes them more susceptible to offering good speech? Why maids? Why maids? Why do maids provide good speech?
Maybe because someone who has nothing has knowledge, or maybe
Okay.
has more knowledge than regular people who may have
Okay.
wealth.
Yeah, so knowledge, lack in a sense, right, provides opportunities for a different type of knowledge. That makes sense. Anyone else? Why the maids have good speech?
Would it be because they serve another family or a person, so they are trusted, and with having good speech, they maintain their job and their safety as well sometimes.
I think, Alexis, you're spot on in the sense of service, right? By occupation, they're meant to serve. And to serve requires an element of humility, right? Which allows you more susceptible to being able to produce good speech. If you're a servant, it's very hard to have an ego, right? It's almost contradictory. That won't work. Your ego won't allow you to serve someone else. So you have to be humble to serve. Those who are humble are more closer to this notion of good speech. So you all kind of picked up on passage 2 through 4, right? And it's very clear. If you're arguing with somebody who is above you, don't say shit. They're going to play themselves out by arguing with you. They're going to look like the dumbass, right? If you're arguing with somebody who's your equal, don't say shit. They're going to be chastised for their evil utterances. If you're arguing with someone who is below you, so to speak, don't say shit. You're going to look crazy for arguing with somebody who is below you. So what is the instructions of Ptahhotep telling us to do when it comes to arguments? What should we do?
Stay quiet.
Shut the fuck up. Right? Don't say shit. Just be quiet. The best thing you could do in an argument, if you want to eliminate strife, is shut the fuck up. It's interesting. If you're in an interaction with a police officer, the best thing to do is what? Shut the fuck up. Same principle, right? Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, is what they tell you. In other words, everything you say, I'm going to use it to my advantage to take your ass to court and jail you. So shut the fuck up. Spiritual practice. Be quiet. Okay. For sake of time, I'm going to move into this notion of the women's role in the text. And then I'm going to get into what my favorite passage is, and then we'll open it up to you. If you can, go to the 21st wisdom teaching, number 21 on page 26. Olivia, if you have that in front of you, can you read that passage for me? When you prosper and establish your home.
Sorry, I was on mute. I said, yeah, let me just get to the document real quick.
Actually, does anyone have it ready, available, and you just could read it just in the sake of time?
I have it.
Go ahead, Amani, thank you.
When you prosper and establish your home, love your wife with ardor, then fill her belly and clothe her back, caress her, give her ointments to serve her body, fulfill her wishes for as long as you live. She is a fertile field for her husband. Do not be brutal. Good manners will influence her better than force. Do not contend with her in the courts. Keep her from the need to resort to outside powers. Her eye is her storm when she gazes. It is by such treatment that she will be compelled to stay in your house.
So let me ask you all, is this passage objectifying or subjectifying women? And why?
I guess you could say subjective because they're referring to her as a fertile field, and I guess people can take that as subjective, but
Or you mean objective, like they're being objective?
yeah, sure, objective, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else agree or have a different thought about that?
I would agree as well, saying that it is subjective because it's practically saying the proper ways to treat a woman. There's no way around it. That's just how it should go, even in today's society.
So Harlan is arguing that women are not being objectified in this passage, right? I would have to agree with Harlan. I'm gonna read it one more time, right? And see if you can catch what I'm putting down. When you prosper and you establish your home, so when you get a little bit of money and you buy yourself a home, right? Love your wife, adore your wife, okay? And then fill her belly, put clothes on her back, caress her, give her ointments that soothe her body, fulfill her wishes for as long as you live. Are they saying women fulfill your husband's wishes? No. Husband, men, fulfill your wife's wishes for as long as you live. That's your duty as a husband, okay? Do not be brutal. Good manners will influence her better than force. Influence her, right? Not tell her what to do, not demand on her, influence her. Hopefully, she'll acquiesce to which you're trying to influence, but it's still her decision, okay? Do not contend with her in the courts. Keep her from the need to resort to outside powers. That's agency for women. Because what he's saying is, if you fuck up, she has the right to go outside of your home and find what she needs. So who has the agency in this passage, right? The women have the decision and the choice to be where they want to be, where they feel that they are treated appropriately, right? It's the man's duty to make sure that you create a space that she feels honored and comfortable. She feels adored, right? Her eye is her storm when she gazes. So my wife, I know shit's bad by how she looking. She got that gaze in her eye. I know a storm is coming. The kids know the storm is coming. Like, yo, we got to get our shit together before moms get home, because if not, all this shit getting fucked up, right? It's not an objectifying of women here. It's speaking to the power of women, speaking to the agency of women. It's telling men how to perform in order to maintain a woman, because it tells you it is by such treatment that she will be compelled to stay in your house, which means she has the option to go outside of your house if you're not doing what you're supposed to. I see you, bro. Give me 1 second. So let's get to this notion of the field, okay? Context becomes important. This is an ancient society, an ancient agrarian society, to where agriculture and farming is of the utmost importance, right? So not only is a fertile field a metaphor for the ability to produce riches, right? Because if you're a farmer and you have crops that are healthy, you'll be able to eat, right? You'll be able to be wealthy, right? Fertile field is giving birth. Women provide children. My wife is from East Africa, Eritrea, and they have a saying that when babies come with bread, right? So when you have a baby, you have food and your money will grow. Each time I had a seed, my money doubled. Each time I had a seed, my money doubled, right? So this is a metaphor for not only women's ability to provide abundance, right? Because if you're a farmer and you have a field that is fertile, you will be wealthy. But it's also quite literal in the sense that they are going to provide you children, right? Kayleen, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to kind of clarify. I didn't necessarily mean that it was objective. I was saying, like, I can understand how people can see it as that. But like I took it, like when I first read it, I took it as if like it was an analogy, kind of what you're saying about the fertile field, but more so like in order for your crops and whatnot to grow and for that harvest to come complete, you have to take care of it. So it's like in order for your woman to be technically complete and what all the pastors were saying, you have to, take care of it, cherish it and whatnot. So yeah, I didn't think it was objective, but I can see how some people can interpret it that way.
Good call out. Thank you for clarifying. And to me, this kind of goes back to what Alexis is saying, what her parents taught her, right? Like, if you plant your seed in good soil, you will reap the harvest of that. Right? It's the same thing. If you treat your women appropriately, if you treat your partner, your spouse, your wife appropriately, you will reap the benefits of that union. So I know Olivia, Imani, y'all kind of felt that women had no role within the text. Now, upon hearing my interpretation of the passage, how do you feel now?
Oh no, I definitely see a difference in what you were saying. When I first read it, I kind of interpreted it as like men go out and do all the work and these are applied to men. But seeing it from your point of view, yeah, I can see how it's saying the woman still does have not, I don't know how to describe it, but you know what I'm saying. Like this woman still these rules apply to her in a different sense.
It's about how to treat her. The rules don't apply to her at all. It's about how men should perform in order to honor your woman, right? So no, they're not rules for them because the women ain't fucking up. They ain't the ones with the problem, right? It's the men who need to be instructed on how to perform, right? Amani, your thoughts?
I think also to add on to that, like we have a more like modern way of thinking it instead of thinking about how it was back then, because obviously we have, different things nowadays, different, teachings and, different way to do things. So maybe the way our modern way of thinking it was really what was kind of switching it up and not given on how it was supposed to be taken.
Yes, you're spot on. You actually took the words out of my mouth. Like I said, I've been teaching this for 3 years now, and this always comes up in conversation. But you're right. What happens is we're reading this from the vantage point of 2023, with all the sexism, misogyny, patriarchy that is embedded within our society. We cannot see these things without seeing that. So it distorts the way that we interpret it. So this is a great example of how we have to do a close read and read for what's there. We can't bring our own baggage into the reading, right? Because if you think about it, last week I told you all that there's a statue with Aset, right? And I said that the statue of Aset is built with the same dimensions as the statue of Asar to show the equality between these two groups, right? So if that is the truth, we cannot assume that this text doesn't honor women, right? So for the sake of time, I'm going to read what I found to be the most important. And then I don't know if we'll have time for fishbowl, but we'll open it up to conversation. I'm looking at 11 on page 21. Follow your heart as long as you live. Do no more than is required. Do not shorten the time of follow the heart, since that offends the Ka. And we know that the Ka is the soul, right? Don't waste time on daily cares over and beyond providing for your household. When wealth finally comes, then follow your heart. Wealth does no good if you're glum. So for as long as you live, do nothing more than to follow your heart, to live your purpose, to do what you have been placed on this planet to do. Do not shorten the time of living your purpose or following your heart, because that offends your soul. Don't waste time doing anything other than providing for the needs of your household. Once the needs for your household have been provided for, your job now becomes to follow your heart, to live your purpose. When wealth finally comes, so it may take it some time, right? But it's going to come. When it finally comes, what do? You follow your heart. Because even when you get the wealth, it's not going to do nothing for you if you're depressed, if you're sad, right? How many wealthy people do we know that took their own lives? Flip that. How many grounded people who follow their heart and live their purpose take their own lives? Not many, if any, right? So this is my favorite passage because this gives us the clearest directions on how to live without internal strife. Because if you have strife internally, you're going to spread that strife to somebody else. It's the old saying, hurt people hurt people. So what this passage is telling you how to do is how to mitigate, how to remove internal strife. And that is done by following your heart, not the bag, as this society and this world will confuse you to believe, not material things, not fame, not attention, not likes, your heart. This is why we are a society in constant strife. Can't get along. We can't find peace. We can't find harmony because no one even knows what their heart wants. No one even thought about what my heart wants. But what I'm telling you is this: what your heart wants is for you to live your purpose. So I practice the African tradition of the Akan, A-K-A-N. And the Khan believes that the human being is made up of 3 parts. The Sunsum, which is your spirit, the okra, what is your soul, and then your flesh, your body, right? Your okra, your soul, is what signifies what your purpose is. You have gifts, you have talents, you have abilities, you have skills. Those let you know what your purpose is because the ancestors, the creator, Allah, God gave them to you. They gifted them to you so you can improve the conditions of those around you. That's why we were all placed here. That's why you all have these gifts and talents. The unfortunate thing is, because of the society that we live in and what this society values, you don't know that you have a purpose. You don't know that these talents have been gifted to you for you to improve the society. You think that's just there for you to make money. Follow your heart. And when the wealth comes, follow your heart. So if you take nothing from the teachings of Ptahhotep, if you take nothing from this course, know you have a purpose. And know the desire of your heart is to find that purpose and live that purpose. That's it. All you have to do outside of living your purpose is making sure that your household is intact. Anything else is the waste of your fucking time. This is what we're here for. Final thoughts, final comments, final questions. Diego, what you thinking?
So how like distant we are as a society now than back during this time that we were just talking about, and to see how we flip words now than what they actually talked about back then.
Yeah, it
Like,
makes you really think about this notion of progress, right?
yeah.
Yeah, good call out. Thank you. Ruben, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
It's like they have third world countries and I guess like technology wise and economically, I guess we're like considered a first world, and like Africa, the continent, different countries in there would be considered third world, but spiritually, they're way more advanced than we've probably ever been. And I think for the most part, well, not us, but like Europeans that went down there, they did like a terrible job interpreting the teachings, and they kind of misconstrued some things, and some values and some morals were missed. And so we're kind of like the richest nation, but at the same time, the poorest. So it's a weird thing.
And just to further complicate that, Ruben, like, one, why are we rich, right? Because the free labor of African people, right? And then we're poor because you fail to understand the values of the people who you enslaved. Francisco, what are you thinking?
Oh yeah, going off of like what Diego said, how you can misinterpret you can misinterpret the meanings because you're thinking of have the mindset of today's society instead of like way back in the history in the past. And say like how do I word this? Well, today's meaning would have like a way vastly different meaning that it had in that time period.
Yeah. Kimberly, last one. What are you thinking or what are you feeling?
It gives me like a step back of how society really influences you. And I think it was really interesting to see how you had a different approach to it, while I had my own, like, while reading it, I had my own thoughts, and it really turned my perspective of how I saw it ultimately. So it really shows how we can all perceive stuff really different.
And are you talking specifically about like the role of women within the text?
Yeah, the role of women, yeah.
Yeah. And really, I think Imani said it best, right? The reason why you viewed it that way, and this is what Kaylin was kind of getting at, right? Like, you could view it as being objective because of the world that we live in. We're living in a world where women are so undervalued and underprotected and under-honored that it's easy to read this in that same paradigm. But it's vastly different from what they were about, right? So we have to begin to kind of decolonize our mind so we can kind of, access this information in the way that it was intended, right? I would want to point out to you the readings for next week. We won't have class Monday, it's a holiday. So we will pick back up next Wednesday. What I would like to do for next Wednesday's course, right here, week 3, Africans and their history, traditions of myths and stereotypes. Read that. And if you get through that very quickly, start picking up on The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Just kind of give you an idea, right? We're going from who African people were to the values that African people sought. And then how do we go from where we were to where we're at now? And this is what will kind of let us know this notion of myths and stereotypes. And then the actual destruction of these civilizations also lead us to getting to where we are now in our conceptualization of African people. So read this for Wednesday for sure. If you have time to get through it and you have some free time, you can start picking up that, and we'll cover this. This will actually be covered for week 4, but we'll get into that next week as well. Are there any last minute questions, comments, or concerns anyone has for me?
Yeah, for the journal this week, do we turn that in, or do we use the same, I guess, because I use a doc, so do we make a journal for the reading for next week as well?
Just continue the same document so that way you have it all on one document. So that way it's easy to turn in. You just got one file to submit, and then I can just kind of go through that, give you a grade, and get that back to you. Then so just think about what you read, even though it's in 2 separate parts, that's one journal entry, right? And then for next week, the myths and stereotypes, that's one journal entry, right? Then this one will be one journal entry for both readings. So by the time we finish The Destruction of Black Civilization, we should have 3 total journal entries. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Also, I didn't see on the journal submission thing how if there's a length requirement or anything like that. Is there specific?
No, as long as you have the 4 components, the thesis, the analysis, the contemporary analysis, and questions, you'll get your full points for that. And then I'm going to collect the journals with the midterm and again at the end of the semester.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? No. Go ahead, Alexis.
The contemporary analysis, that's how we relate it to present day.
Correct. Perfect. So if this is the oldest book in the world, how does it relate to our current world, right? That's what I'm looking for in your contemporary analysis.
And then you want questions after that?
Yes, please produce a question. Your question is probably the most important part of your journal, right? So don't smut on the questions. Take that very serious.
What can you give an example of how the question should be?
So I question the role of women within the teachings of Ptahhotep, right? That's a question that you could kind of produce. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's just a question on what we read, basically. Okay.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, y'all. It's an extended weekend. Be safe, be healthy, be wise. It's fucking hot, so drink a lot of water, right? And I will see you all next Wednesday. Peace.